Hello, everybody. Welcome. Before we start, I just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay. Let me know in the comments. We are live both on Twitch and we're testing out being live on Facebook as well. Awesome. Thank you. So welcome to the V2 progress update and show off. We're going to show off some of the stuff that's been done. We're also going to just talk about some of the stuff that's been done that can't really be shown off. We're going to talk about a couple changes that V2 is bringing to the game, and we are going to do a Q&A at the end. So really fast, I'm just gonna have Lydia talk, say hi, and make sure that you guys can hear her as well. So Lydia.
Hey everybody, let me know if the comments if you can't hear me.
Perfect. It never goes smoothly when we live stream, so we always like to double check that stuff before we jump into it, because otherwise we talk to you for 5 minutes and realize that you couldn't hear us. So let's jump into V2 progress update, part 1. We're going to kind of split it into 2 parts. The first part being the backend update. So if you guys aren't aware, this development roadmap is available on the blog. I believe I have a link to it. Actually, I don't think I have a link to it in the game. It is on the blog. We may be adding the link to the current version of the game, but it is accessible from the blog. I have a link in the Discord, and I will add a link to an announcement post in the game for those of you who aren't in the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, I do highly recommend joining the Discord. We are fairly active in there. A lot of people are really active. It's a really fun group, and we have a lot of great conversations and talk about the game. So where are we with the back end features of V2? As you can see here, we have, oh, my titles are gone. They're down there. So this last column is completed, things that are completed. This is things in testing. These are things that are in progress. And then we have pending and things we're discussing. Oh, great. Thanks, Stevie. Glad it's linked in the wiki. So what do we have complete? Well, we have, you can ignore anything outlined in red. Those are bugs from V1. But most of the back-end features are done. Rollovers have not been completed, except the show creation rollover. Other than that, it's like color coding, genetic testing. You can go in, I'm not going to read all of these off. You can go look. They have a significant portion. I will more talk about what is in testing and what is yet to be complete and the timeline for those. So currently in testing, we have imports in testing. What it means in testing is the features are pretty much complete, but we have to confirm that they're working as intended. And a lot of this in testing stuff has been done to the extent we can do it at this point until rollovers are completed, or they're things that I can't test at this point. I had to hand over to Lydia, and she's testing like the breeding. Imports, we have to make sure that they've got the right allele frequencies and such. Leases are waiting for rollover, show systems waiting for rollover. Some of this could probably get moved over, like the horse photo album. That's waiting on the front end. So some of this also is waiting on the front end to be able to complete the testing for that section. So what is pending and what is the timeline for that? So we've got all of the rollovers besides the show creation rollover. This show's rollover is the show's running. Those are probably going to happen towards the end of V2 development for the what we like to call the MVP, or the minimal viable product, which all that means is the basic features that are required to be semi-complete or complete enough to play the game and put the game out to you guys. So we've got all the rollovers. I'm saving those kind of towards the end. The new auctions system, which requires the new auctions rollover, is pending some design decisions, so that's why it isn't done yet. Clubs are also pending some discussions that we're making and some changes that we'll be revealing in the future. Inactivity freeze, waiting on rollovers. That's a part of rollovers. And then the ranking searches, ranch finances is included into rollovers. Account management and the credits and substore aren't. They will be a part of the MVP, or at least the credits and substore and the account management will be. The activity freeze should be as well. Clubs will be as well. The rankings and searches, we just didn't find them as necessary to put in immediately. We're trying to, which I guess brings us, we were going to wait towards the end to announce this, but I think it makes more sense to announce it now. We have made a decision on V2. Originally, our plan was to get V2 completely across the finish line before we brought it to all of you. That being said, we have reevaluated that. And the reason we've reevaluated that is not because it's taking longer than intended. I think it's going actually possibly quicker than, certain things are going quicker than I anticipated. Certain things are going slower than I anticipated. So we're kind of breaking even. But we just don't want to leave you guys waiting any longer than necessary. So our goal is to get to what I explained earlier, the MVP. What that means is there will be some features missing in V2 in the early release. And those features would include things like clubs, rankings. Well, clubs may be in we're still deciding exactly which features. Clubs may be in version 1. The absolute necessary things that will be in version 1 is obviously breeding, showing, all the range management stuff. What am I forgetting?
The new training system.
The new training system will be in there. Pretty much anything that is a fundamental change that that is required for the main game loop, which is breeding, showing, breeding and showing. That's pretty much the game loop. Rankings and searches. What will happen with rankings is your horse will, like, if you had a horse before rankings are implemented that should be at the top of the rank, it still will be. It's just more the display of the rankings. Searches, same thing. These are all things that will be fairly quick to implement, which is another reason we decided to add them post-release, because I'll be able to really quickly get the forums done. Because the back end on a lot of these things is already done or mostly done, it's just getting the front end. So likely what will happen is we'll release V2, the MVP, and then every week a new feature will probably be added roughly. Every week to 2 weeks, we'll add a new feature of the missing features. Again, we'll make sure everything that is required to play the base game will be there. So that is the plan for the back end. I think I'm not going to give a time schedule because I have switched focus for now on the front end, getting the MVP part of the front end done because we wanted to be able to start showing you guys things. We also needed it to be able to as you can see, our testing list is getting a little bit long. So we want to be able to get some of these tested on, moved out of testing in the back end before I start things like rollover. Okay, I could talk on and on and on about this. I think that gives you guys a really good idea of where we are with the back end features. So we're going to put a pin in that. If you guys have any questions about the back end progress, we're going to take questions at the end. So just kind of hang on to them and you can throw them up in chat at the end. So that brings us to a new feature that we want to share with you guys. And that is chromosomal inheritance. And you may have seen the blog post last week talking about chromosomal inheritance and what that means, but it's a little bit complicated to understand. So Lydia is going to give a little bit of a presentation now about what that is, and then we'll talk about what that means for the game. So I'm going to hand it over to Lydia.
Sure. So a big goal we had with Legacy was to make it a really challenging breeding game, as realistic as possible to real life, and also make it educational. And I brought up a small gripe to Whitney a while back, saying, while we have everything is fantastic as is, in reality, horses don't have completely random inheritance like we have in the game, where everything is just 50-50 separate of themselves. In real life, horses actually have chromosomes, and she took what I said as a challenge and actually made digital chromosomes on our horses, in V2 at least. So what I am talking about is, in real life, horses have chromosomes like we have pictured here. These are supposed to represent the same chromosome. These are called homologs. So, horses, they're diploid. They have two alleles. The reason why I have two alleles is because you have two copies of the same chromosome. So you can imagine this is chromosome 3 showing the extension gene and kit genes. And if you want to hit next, Whitney.
Keep going.
It should pop up. So, yeah. So you can imagine, you can hit next again. Hit it a couple times, I think.
Okay.
So you imagine if the stallion's genotype is, big E, little e, Sabino 1, I should say N instead of E, my bad. What it would look like on chromosomes, because these genes are actually on the same chromosome, is you have the big E and the N are connected to each other, and the little e and the Sabino 1 are connected to each other. So if you talk about one gene, yes, they do have 50% chance of getting the big E or a 50% chance of getting the little e inherited. Hit next one more time. And the same with Sabino, 50% chance of Sabino, 50% chance of non-Sabino. But because they are on the same chromosome, if you're talking about both genes together, it's not actually a 50% chance of getting each specific combination of those alleles. Hit one, next again. So yeah, 50-50 isn't always true, and you can go on to the next slide. So yeah, if genes are located on the same chromosome, you don't always have a 50-50% chance, and it's not always. I'll talk about that in a second. This is because of linkage. So a chromosome is a really long strand of DNA. So these genes are all on a strand. You can think of them as like a single gene would be like a bead on a necklace. So they're physically connected to each other. And because of that, that changes up how inheritance happens. So in this case, this horse here, if this were, you say this is a stallion, his foals are going to be more likely to inherit the big E allele without Sabino, and the red allele with Sabino. Go ahead and click forward a couple times to the next slide. But the reason why this is so this changes up how horses inherit things, and we're going to be implementing that in the future game. But rest assured, it's not always, if something is linked in the game, it's not always true that you're always going to get two things inherited together. There's a thing that happens in meiosis called recombination, which breaks up linkage. So in recombination, I'm going to ignore the sister chromatids here. And if you're a genetics nerd, I know this is not 100% true, but we're just going to ignore sister chromatids because of the complexity. Imagine you have your homologous chromosomes. They actually pair up during meiosis and then just swap a piece of each other. That way you break up some alleles and flip them onto the opposite homolog. And where that break happens varies. So you imagine you can get different scenarios. And go on to the next slide. So this is going to be simulated in the new game, and this is going to change how inheritance happens. And it'll affect, as far as play goes, players won't be able to see too much of this because we don't show you the genes anyway, but there are some genes like extension, kit, Tobiano, and Roan are known to be linked in real life. So you will actually be able to see some of this happen, that you will get some alleles more likely to be inherited together in the game. Go ahead and hit next twice. So one thing you can know about it is if a gene is really close to each other, like extension and kit here, it's very likely that you're going to inherit certain alleles together, whereas ones that are further apart in the chromosomes, because there's going to be a recombination happening somewhere pretty much always in between them, it's very likely that you will essentially have a 50-50 chance with those. Hit next, I think, just a couple more times, and this will wrap up. So what this might look like is, say you might have a stallion who has the Big E and Sabino on the same homolog. So a lot of his foals will be black or bay-based Sabinos. Hit next twice more, yeah, and then we'll be done. Or, like I said, these genes you won't be able to see and stuff, but maybe you'll find a stallion with good stamina also tends to produce big nostrils, just based on what I'm showing you here. Or a mare with a sway back also tends to produce downhill foals. So we're going to have things like that simulated in V2, which is really exciting. And I know I'm a huge nerd, but I am so stoked for this. Yeah, I'm going to wrap up there and let Whitney show you some other things now.
Okay. So we're going to go talk about the front end, and we actually have things to show you. So this is V2 right here. This is V2 as it exists currently. This is what we've got done. Well, I mean, this is part of what we've got done. So this is just, horse. You can see some of the stuff I've got done here. I want to scroll down and just kind of show you what has been completed. So a lot of this, I want to preface this with, a lot of this is going to look very similar or the same as V1. But there are some exciting UI changes that we've made, and we're going to go over a couple of them here. So normal V1, this is just, we've got all of this done. We've got the registration system done on the front end. We've got the feed, which we're going to come back to. Location change has moved around a little bit. Now, when you change location, if it's in a barn, you'll see a little picture of a barn. If it's in a pasture, you're going to see a little picture. This down here is something else that we're adding to V2. Instead of sometimes having a pop-up for confirmations for some things and sometimes not, there's going to be these little things called toasts in the bottom right-hand corner that will give you success or failure messages. So if I were to try to move this to barn 2, oh, no, that was a success. Well, you can see then it'll switch back to a barn there. That way, at a glance, you can see, is this horse in a pasture or is this horse in a barn? But if I were to try to re-register this, I'll just name him after myself. You can see I will get an error that says provide a color. If I provide a color and a pattern and hit register, I'm going to get another one that says horse already been registered. So this is a huge, it's a minor thing, but for me, it's a huge user-friendly addition to V2. Yeah. So we'll come back to the feed. We've got stud management in its own section now. The other management is where the job management has moved to, barn name, color code, selling, and I don't have the leasing in here yet. It may be in its own, it may be moving to its own section. I haven't decided. This is new. We've got the Ranch Manager. For those of you who have the Ranch Manager subscription, you will now be able to manage your horse from the individual horses page or from the Ranch Manager page. So you've got a couple options. We've got the show entry, and then, of course, we've got the customization here. I don't have the sales history done on this page yet, but this page is 90% done, or this tab of the horse page. We're going to take a pause on the showing of what's been done and talk about the new feed system in the game. And it's really the old feed system, slightly complicated, but also not. And I'm going to explain that now. So we wanted to give players more granular control over their horse's feed intake. And we thought it'd just be really fun to be a little bit more realistic. As you guys know, we love realism. We love trying to be as realistic as possible. And that doesn't just go for the genetics of the game. I mean, that obviously we're hitting it out of the park on that, if I do say so myself. But we want to be realistic in the management of the horses as much as possible without making the game unfun. So one of the things we changed is the feed system. There are 2 ways you can manage the feed now. You can use a preset. They're the same presets that we currently have. And as you can see, it's changing the values down here of these sliders. These have the same values and will have the same condition change that they currently have. So if you don't want to mess with the new feed system, you really don't have to. You can just choose your preset. Your preset will set all of these to what they need to be to get the same result as V1. However, if you want to manage your feed more granularly, you can actually manage it through these 4 inputs. So we have grass hay, alfalfa hay, grain, and you can choose to add a slow feeder or not. Because in reality, there's really no weight loss feed that I could find anyways. I know for weight management, at least when I had a horse and when friends of mine with horses, a lot of times we would use slow feeders, which is, if you're not familiar, it's essentially a basket that you put on your horse's muzzle that prevents them from eating as quickly as they would normally be able to eat. It doesn't prevent them from feeding at all, but it does slow down their ability to consume grass. And I know I have a friend that had to do that because the pasture we had our horses on was very green and had high carbohydrate grass with a high amount of carbohydrates in it. And so the horse would founder if she didn't keep it on a slow feeder. We don't have founder in the game currently, and I don't know that we are going to add it to the game, but that is essentially our weight management, like condition management, kind of covers that. So getting into the actual values here. So grass hay is kind of the base feed. Alfalfa hay has more carbohydrates in it, and grain obviously has the most amount of carbohydrates. So in terms of energy, grass hay gives the least energy, alfalfa hay gives a medium amount of energy, and grain gives the most energy. And then slow feeder would reduce that. So you can add up to, I should have had my notes up. You can add up to 30 pounds of grass and 5 pounds of hay, so a total of 35 pounds of feed, or 30 pounds of different hay between the two of them. So if I set this to 30 and I set this to 30 and hit change, it's going to not like that. And it says you cannot provide more than 35 pounds of feed total. So what I would do is I would set these to, say, 20, like this is the most, well, technically this is the most energy I could give a horse. So now I've changed the feed. The grass hay provides, so we're also changing sort of how, I'm going to bring up my notes really fast. Sorry, guys. I should have had this up. Okay. So what it is, and I brought the wrong one up. So let me start that over. Grass hay would increase the horse's condition by 0.25 per 10 pounds. So grass hay can increase it up to 0.75. Alfalfa hay increases it by 0.5 per 10 pounds, so up to 1.5. And then grain is 0.2 per 1 pound. So grain is up to 5 pounds. So grain increases it up to 1. So under this new system, the max a horse could gain per rollover would be about 2.5, or would be 2.5 gain. However, so you might be thinking, well, that's more than they can currently gain. Does that mean we can show them more? No, because a horse in real life naturally is going to burn energy just existing. So a horse in real life actually, or a horse in game will now naturally lose 0.5 condition every rollover if it were getting 0 feed. So if you were to set all of this to 0, which I don't even think I allow you to do, yeah, please provide a feed amount greater than 0. But in theory, if this was set completely to 0, your horse would lose 0.5 pounds per, or 0.5 condition per rollover. A horse at pasture will potentially gain, or will gain 0.25 per rollover. So if you have a horse on pasture, it's going to gain 0.25 per rollover. but a slow feeder reduced that condition gain by 0.25. So if you want a horse to lose weight, you would put them on 10 pounds of grass feed and a slow feeder, or grass hay, sorry. And then a horse is going to be losing weight. Because a slow feeder, I didn't say this, but a slow feeder reduces the condition gain by 0.25. So a horse on pasture is going to have a harder time losing weight than a horse in a barn, just like in real life. And these numbers might be tweaked, might need to be tweaked as we play with this, as we test it. And I'm giving you a lot of numbers. Like, don't worry about the numbers right now. It's just to give you an idea. But essentially, if I have a horse that's showing, I probably want them on all alfalfa hay and grain. And what I'm going to do, and I haven't added it now, but we're going to have a little number under each of these sliders that says how much gain, and then a total number somewhere in this box that says the total gain that the horse is going to be receiving. That number will only be the gain. It won't be the same as this condition change bar here. The condition change bar takes in effect all of the tasks, or all of the tasks that a horse is doing plus the feed that is on. So this will show up here, will show you the total change in condition the horse will have overall for that rollover. This will just show you what the feed is doing, if that makes sense. So that's all I have for the feed system, the new feed system. We still have to test this. We still have to make sure it's, working the way we intended. But we wanted to share it with you guys today because it was already in the game. And I think it's a cool change. I personally like the idea of managing my horses a little bit more granularly. But that's why we also kept the presets in here. So if you don't want to, this preset, as you can see, will change it to exactly what you need for showing, losing weight, etc. So that is the feed system, and that is the profile tab of the horse as complete as it is currently. The next thing we want to show you is the confirmation tab, and we've made some changes to the confirmation tab. So as you can see now, it's very different. There is no confirmation traits by default, but we do have this horse with all these dots on it. And what happens when I click a dot? Well, I get to see the confirmation traits for that area of the body. So we did this way because it can be confusing. Like I forget, like, where is the loin? The loin on the horse. I can never remember where the loin is. It always confuses me. But it's right here. So yeah, this will show you where, I want to look at my horse's knees, and bone is going to be there, the muzzle, nostril size, head profile, head size, hoof size and feathering, pastern angle and pastern length. Like, yeah, but this isn't it. This isn't the whole thing. If you want to see all of your horse's confirmation traits at once, you can just select all from this dropdown and you can see them all. If you want to know which confirmation traits impact which performance trait, for instance, I breed endurance horses, so I want to see stamina, I can select stamina. It will only show the confirmation traits that impact stamina. Same with strength. This will only show the impact strength. I don't know about you guys. I'm a huge, oh my gosh, I can't think of the word, spreadsheet girl. When it comes to my horses, I like to plug in certain confirmation traits into the spreadsheet, and that's what gave me the idea to do this, is because I'm always having to dig through all the confirmation traits to find the ones that I want in the spreadsheet based off of the performance trait I'm looking at. So we figured this would make that a lot easier. It also saves you a step because I'm always having to look at the wiki to see which confirmation traits affect which stats. This saves you that extra search. So you can just literally look at it and it will show you which ones. It doesn't show you which ones affect how much, whereas the wiki will give you an idea of the higher impact traits, but it does give you the traits. So next, the health tab has been changed a little bit as well. So as you can see, we got rid of the illnesses, injuries section, sort of. We now have another horse diagram. And what will happen is when your horse is injured, it will pop up a little icon here where the horse's injury, roughly where, obviously, like muscle soreness could technically happen anywhere, but we just picked a spot that made sense for those. But for instance, this horse has an injury or an illness, so I'm going to select that, and it's going to bring up the fact that it has colic. So when I get a notification that a horse has been injured, I'll come to the health page and I will click on the injury. Horses will in V2 be able to have multiple injuries or illnesses at the same time. It is very unlikely, but it is possible. But it's very unlikely. Once it's popped up, I have my icon here to treat and my icon to call the vet. And I don't currently have those hooked up to the back end, but they are there. So that's how that's going to look. The rest of this, we have all of your, these should not all say color tests. I will fix that. But we have all of our tests just like before. And then we also have a ailment history. So we're calling them ailments because it's a combination of injuries and illnesses. So I will see that this horse had colic on December of year -1. The year is set to 0 right now, so it's not really calculating properly. But if the horse were to get another injury, it would add another line for another for the next injury with the date. The idea of that is because injury proneness does have a genetic component, we wanted to give you a way to track it without having to do it within the game to track it. So you'll be able to track if a horse is incredibly injury prone or not very easily. So that is the health tab. The next tab we have complete is the breeding tab. Now, I will say you'll see this little Instabreed here. This is a testing feature only. It will not be in the live game. We do not allow instabreeding, but for Lydia to do breeding testing for the new chromosomal inheritance, obviously she can't be waiting for the horses to grow up or birth. So plus rollover isn't even implemented in V2 yet. But we have just a slight change to the design of the this is pretty much the same, a slight change to the design of the, pedigree. And then we have the offspring were pretty much the same as they were before. We have a stallion here. I will show you the stallion's breeding. It's pretty much the same as it currently is. But I just wanted to show that this is complete. If this horse wasn't pregnant, you'd also see the regular breeding drop down here. But like I said, it pretty much looks the same as the current version of the game. The last thing that I've completed on the horse, which I just finished today, is the notes section. And we've made some improvements to the notes section that will also be affecting the forum when I get to doing the forum. But you might notice here that I have an image. So these are my private notes. I've got a couple public notes, and then I've got my ability to add notes. I can click on a note, make it bigger. I can actually make it as big or small to an extent. The small should really be making it, but go back small. But yeah, and you might see that I have an image here. Well, in an image here, and we've got a table, and we've got quotes and different colored text and different colored background. Well, the backgrounds were in V1. This is the new editor, rich text editor that we have found for the game, and it is much more comprehensive. So I can actually insert an image here. It takes a second. I can actually resize the image. I can change it to be left justified. I can insert a link. This is just a much better version. It took some digging to find this one. The one that I was using before worked as well as it could, but it definitely was missing features. I'm going to put this with a caveat. We're currently using the free version of this. There is a chance that we will hit a point where we have to pay for it, and we have to figure out, and it's not a cheap product. So we have to figure out if we can actually afford the permanent license for this if we get to the point. So there is a chance that this could be switching to a different version. We'll try to find one with as many features as this does. Unfortunately, most of them are paid. So we have to figure out either how to come up with the money to pay for this feature. I think it's worth it, but we are on a very limited budget at this point in time with the game. But we're willing to do what we can to get this, to keep this in V2, because I think this is going to be incredibly helpful, particularly with the forums, but also on the horse notes. So that is it for the horse page for V2. The only other things that I really have done, the homepage isn't really got much done. The ranch page, I've got the imports done, so we can go ahead and import. And the nice thing is it'll do this little spinny thing while you're importing, so you know that it's importing. And it'll give you the pop-up down here that it's successfully imported. Custom imports are also here, so all the same options as before. Oh, but there's an additional option that I don't want to show you guys, so I'm going to leave that because that's a surprise for later. So we're not going to custom import one, but we can. The other tabs on the ranch page and obviously the banner aren't there. The other page that is complete is the my horses page. And we've got some new filters for this. So here's our filters. We've got the breed, the age, the gender, job, color code. All that's still there. However, for status, we have a couple extra new filters. So we have whether they're pregnant, that was on there before, but we also have whether they're not pregnant. So you could choose a mare. You can choose all your mares who are not pregnant, and then you'll see all the ones that still need to be bred. Whether or not they're nursing, if they're emaciated, fat, or extremely fat, if they have an assigned trainer. Now, caveat with that, that only works with auto trainers. It does not, you can't check to see, I haven't figured out a way for you to check to see if you've trained it, because the new training system is a little bit more complicated on the back end and a little bit harder. We may or may not be adding that, but at this point, you can just see if it has an assigned trainer. Whether the horse is leased, for sale, or for auction. And then, of course, you can search by name. So we have this horse. This should say leased, but this horse is currently leased, etc. So that is all I have to show for now. I'm going to go back to my outline of what we're talking about. And we already went over the new feed system because it made sense to do it in the middle. So Lydia is now going to talk about graying out. So I am going to pull up this slideshow and hand it over to Lydia.
Awesome. So many of you probably know or have seen us mention before that we have really wanted to add graying out to the game, that we weren't happy with how gray works because horses are just, if they're gray, they're born gray. And there's also some issues with just the current shading of grays in the game that we weren't happy with. Fast forward to now, we have figured out a way to actually make the horses gray out, and we are excited to show you a little bit of what that'll look like. And if you want to go into the next slide so that it shows. We don't have it currently in the game, and it takes time, so we're just showing some GIFs of the horses. But now your horses in V2 will be born. They're non-gray color, and over time, as they age in the game, you will actually progressively see them get more and more gray, which we are really excited about. I still have to finish the artwork. I can't guarantee like all of the gray will be ready right at the launch of V2, but eventually you will start seeing this in the game. We've got some examples of other horses. Yeah, you can show them the next ones. So what this might look like, just an example of the ages down below, the different periods of time where the horse grays out. And I will say If you are in Discord and you remember a couple months ago, I mentioned that there is a new study that came out from the researchers at UC Davis. They actually found that there's another gray allele out in the horse population. And they found that this other gray allele, so there's two gray alleles and then the regular non-gray allele, the two gray alleles actually differ in how fast they make the horse gray out. So of course we had to add this to the game. So in V2, there will be two grays. Well, you'll see the allele will be G2 or G3. And I'm not going to tell you which or what exactly happens, but they will actually affect how quickly your horse grays out. And yeah, it can get even cooler too. So if you go to the next slide, we can show your horse with a pattern. So this will also affect patterned horses as well. So yeah, we're really excited to finally have this feature. I'm not aware of any games that actually show graying out to this level, but yeah, it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I'm really excited. The V2 has been a lot of, can we do this? How do I say this? So when I started developing the game, I was a very young developer and had a lot still to learn. This game has taught me so much. And the great thing about our decision to do V2 is that it's with my new, or, I'm now 5 years into being a developer, Lydia or myself will say, hey, I wonder if we could do this. And then I think about it and I'm like, yeah, I think I can figure that out. Like the chromosomal inheritance, like graying out, and a few things that we're not going to share yet. So this is why V2 is happening. Stuff like this. This is what makes us excited about V2 and makes us confident in our decision to rewrite the game, because it's going to make the game significantly better, not just from a code standpoint, but from a gameplay standpoint. So with that being said, we'll just leave the pretty grays up. We'll leave this pretty chestnut light horse. The light horses are my favorite body type in the game. So we're gonna open it to Q&As, but we're gonna go ahead and share the chat. So we'll let that move over. Let's see if the chat actually pops up. Will somebody post something in the chat really fast? I want to see if it will pop up in our chat box. If it doesn't, we'll just go back to the desktop view. Okay. The chat box is not working. Oh, that's okay. We'll just leave it up. I'll figure out the chat box later. So Q&A. First question, is there a chance of another wipe post V2? Yes. So the only other wipe after V2 will be the transition from V2 to the full release. So I wouldn't call it V3. So V2 is like, we're going to be in V2.0. Really, we're in VO 2.0 because of how software and version numbering works. We're not technically in 1.0. So this is going to be a little confusing to say, but when we're in the full 1.0 full release of the game, there will be a wipe. That is our plan. There's a minuscule chance that won't happen, but I don't want to say it won't happen and then have to come back and say, oh, sorry guys, it's going to happen. So plan on a V2 wipe, but know that that's at a minimum going to be a year out from the start of V2, at a minimum. More likely closer to 2 years out. Especially as often as we go, oh, it'd be cool if we added this, which we've done a lot. We keep thinking we're done designing the game, and then we find something else out about new, real life genes or whatnot. And then, or we think, man, it's really more realistic if we do it this way. That stuff. The reason we have to do a wipe before V2 is because I've changed the fundamental, the foundational design of the database of the horses. I've moved things around. I've created additional tables to be able to do things like the graying out and to organize things better and to make it more future-proofed. There's a chance we won't have to wipe at the end of V2, but I don't, that's a small chance and I don't want to give you guys false hope. So V2 will be a great chance to do some more experimenting with breeding styles, and that's what I'm using it for. I mean, obviously we're using it to test as well, but for me, I'm playing around with different breeds that I'm probably going to do full time in full release. But yeah. Any other questions? Give you guys a second. Go ahead and click to the next horse. We'll switch it up. Will there be a tutorial? We do plan on adding a tutorial to the game at some point. It isn't on our current MVP list, but we're open to adding it to the MVP list. We have to work out exactly how we're going to do that. We don't want it to be, for instance, well, I'm not going to point out a specific game, but there is a game that I played similar to ours that had a tutorial that did not allow you to play the game unless you completed the tutorial, and I had to redo it, and it was very frustrating, and I ended up quitting the game because I ended up actually getting stuck because I left in the middle of the tutorial and didn't come back for 3 months, and then I couldn't complete the tutorial because my horse wasn't available anymore. So we don't want that. So doing the tutorial is going to be a little bit tricky. We need something that isn't very in your face. We have the wiki. It may just be like pop-ups with a short, like, little snippet of information and a link to the wiki. We're not 100% sure. But anyways.
Did you see Namira's question about sunburn?
Oh, I did not. Can you read it? Because I am not seeing it.
It's above the one about the tutorial, but asking about are we adding or think about adding sunburn for gray horses in pasture?
I mean, we're open to anything. We would just have to discuss it. Namira, can you do me a favor and put that into the ideas forum category in the forum of the game so we don't forget about it, and we will discuss it. I'm definitely open to it. We just have to figure out like what it would impact in game. There's certain things that we haven't added because like, okay, what would it impact? When is the intended release of V2? I can't say yet. We can't say yet. The reason we can't say yet is because we still have a couple features, and here's the tricky part of what we're doing. We both work full-time jobs and are working on the game on the side in our off hours. We still dedicate a significant amount of time. I mean, I'm sure I still put 20 plus hours a week into the game, if not more. Especially in the winter when my personal life slows down, I put easily that much. The problem is I don't always know how much time I can give to the game every week, and so it's hard to give an estimate of when certain features will be complete, especially as we're diving into new features that we're or remaking features where I haven't quite figured out how to do it yet. I don't know how long it's going to figure it out. I will say we're a minimum, and I hate even saying this, but we're a minimum, a big minimum of 3 to 6 months out. Once V2 is released, will there be any more changes and updates regarding the gameplay? We would like V2 to be the end of, well, the end of V2 will mean no more new features. The beginning of V2, since we've decided to do the minimal product, the base game, then features will be added throughout V2. Will major features be added? I don't think so, but we keep saying we're done adding features and then we think of new features. I will say at the end of V2, when we go into full release, we will be done adding major features. Any plans to add full models and or models for each breed? For models for each breed, the answer is no, unfortunately. And the reason why is because the way that we chose to do it allows us to have hundreds of millions, and I'm not exaggerating, we stopped calculating it like over 600 million coat, and it's even more now with the graying out, coat and pattern combinations. And that is only going to increase as once we get to a point where the game is stable and we're not having to spend all the time working on finishing the game, we'll be able to add more patterns and not more base colors. The colors are done, but more patterns and markings and such, which is only going to increase that number. So breed specific artwork, I'm going to say no. Full specific artwork, we have discussed and we will continue to discuss, but it is very tricky because what will happen is what we would have to do is have a single or maybe one or two or three full models for like one full for ponies and cobs, one for minis, and one for everyone else, all the other body types. And getting their patterns to match what the adult patterns would be is just not possible. Like, because each body type has its own pattern set. So if we did do it, and I'm not saying we're not, like I said, it's something we've discussed, you would have to be okay with the full potentially changing or the pattern not matching when it grew up. Okay, Namir, thank you for putting that in. Will there be error notifications for entering courses and show that they don't qualify for, such as wrong age or not enough points? You will not, yes, because you will not actually be able to, in V2, enter shows that horses don't qualify for. It's just not going to allow you to do it. So you'll get an error message that says, cannot be entered. Do you have any plans for a show arrive when OP players enter competitions and new players can't get their competition points or make any money this way? We have some plans for changes that we're not going to go into detail right now. In the show, the show system is going to go through a semi-major rework. The point system is getting reworked. The show types are getting reworked a little bit. I'm not going to go into details. That'll be in a later stream or announcement or blog post. But we have plans for pushing players who are higher level into higher level shows and leaving the lower level shows for younger like not younger as in age, but newer players. So, and I will say one thing that will be added, I think Lydia will be okay with me saying this, is the shows will automatically create new shows once the original, so every rollover week or every day shows get created at night for the next day. If those shows fill up in V2, a new show will be created. It's definitely a tricky balance, though, figuring out how to push competition into the upper levels, motivate people to push their competition into the upper levels, etc. Any plans to add any new breeds? Don't currently have any plans to add new breeds. That is likely like an end V2. Adding new breeds is something we could potentially do post alpha. Same with adding disciplines. The way we've designed the game, it's possible. The trickiest part is the in-hand shows. At this point, we just have so many other things that are more important to do to get V2 out the door. But we are open. If there was a big push for a specific breed to be added to the game, we would take it into consideration. But it would have to be a big enough ask from enough members of the community. But again, we're not opposed to it. It's just not a priority right now. No problem. And if you guys have any more questions, we'll give it a couple more minutes. We can switch. We'll just answer Ha's question really fast. And Chantel. Okay, we've got a few people. Sorry about that, guys. So what happened was my personal Twitch, our streaming service application somehow switched us from the game's Twitch to my personal Twitch. I did not know that was possible, but apparently it is, and so that is what happened. So we'll answer those couple of questions and then we'll probably wrap up. Yes, Twitch being funky, for sure. I'll just look at this little guy. Anyway, so I don't know where the audio cut out, but we'll talk about, it looks like a special store. So we'll talk about the special store. We're going to leave the store probably mostly as is. We'll leave the TAC credits and background credits. So you buy one and apply one per horse, and then they get access to any of the backgrounds. That's our plan anyways. I don't think that, if we were to switch it to buy individual items, we would have to make the cost of it a lot smaller, and it would actually be to our detriment because the processing, the financial processing system that we use charges a minimum of 30 cents per transaction. So if like a tax credit is only 50 cents and a percentage on top of that, if a tax credit is only 50 cents or something like that, it's really not, we're making this, not that it's all about what we make. We only want the game to support itself. But we have to balance that with giving you guys good value for your money, essentially. So I think it's going to stay the same. What I did say earlier was that we do have another credit type coming to the store for customization options. I'm not going to spoil what it is yet, but we will be announcing that at some point in the next month or two. So, the other question was a balanced and player-friendly subscription option. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Ha, if you want to clarify a little bit. I mean, our subscription right now, I guess, like, there is a potential that we could do a cheaper subscription that limits access to only certain parts of, like, the ranch manager. But right now, I don't even remember how much it is off the top of my head, which is bad. I should know. But I don't think our subscription price is too prohibitive at the moment, especially for the individual. Like if you're doing it for your existing ranch, I think it's only $5 a month. So Chantel, I got import credits back to the wipe happening, and I'm scared to spend them on V2 if that means I won't get them back for the full release. Should I wait until the full release? If you're worried about that, yes, I would wait until the full release, because we did say that we weren't going to do that again after the announcement of the wipe, and we have been fully upfront about the 2 wipes. I mean, we asked the community about doing 2 wipes, and you guys as a community voted for doing 2 wipes instead of paying for the migration of the data. So if I were you and I were concerned about it, I would hold on to those credits that you want to hold on to. Do know, though, you're still getting every 120 days. Is it 120 days, Lydia? 4 months, right? Yep. Every 120 days, you're going to get 3 credits, and that continues through Alpha V2, V1 and V2. That makes sense then. Okay. Any other last minute questions before we wrap up the stream? I know we probably lost quite a few of you with the technical difficulties. Okay, I don't. Oh. Yep, we're doing great. Thank you, Chantel. We're going to end it. So it sounds like we're still having audio issues. So it sounds like a good time to end the stream. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. And we're excited for we're going to try to do this a little bit more often, especially as V2 progresses. So All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody.